Hello everyone. This is another live that we're doing with SFS, and this time we're going to have Chloe Stevens join us, who I'm very excited to talk to about, as you can see from the title, building strength training for everyone, but especially for women. So cover everything with Chloe. I'm just going to invite her here. Okay, so I've invited her. Hopefully she can hear us and join when she can.
Hi.
There we go. Hello. How are you? How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Yep, just kind of getting started. Everyone can join slowly. So yeah, I was just saying that I'm very excited to have you here today to be talking about strength training. I mean, I know you're very passionate about it, which is really good, and that's why we have you here to talk to us about it. Okay, I can see people joining and kind of
Okay.
getting together. So I was actually with Chloe at UCL. We studied together. We did a different course, but
Yeah.
in the same department.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was always great hearing her views and everything. So I'm very excited for all of you to also join and listen. Maybe we can wait a few minutes and see
Yeah, no worries. That's fine.
how people are coming up and joining. So yeah, maybe you want to say a few things about yourself, kind of
Yeah.
what you do, what you're currently doing, which is all very exciting.
Okay. Yeah. So I am actually a women's health physiotherapist, and for those of you who don't know what a women's health physiotherapist is we deal with kind of like pelvic region, I would say, for the most part, dysfunction. So that might be things like prolapse, incontinence, then maybe conditions like endometriosis. Sometimes we go with like chronic pelvic pain, and then we do a lot with like antenatal and postpartum return to exercise or exercise in pregnancy, or kind of musculoskeletal conditions that are to do with pregnancy. So really it's quite a broad list of things that we do as women's health physiotherapists. And I have been doing that for 11 years, and then I did my master's part-time with you.
Yeah.
And my course was just specifically women's health, so I finished in September as well, and then I've gone straight on to do my PhD, which is on resistance training in menopause, and probably going to have a bit of a pelvic health tilt to it as well.
Yeah, that's so exciting. That's amazing. I mean, doing a PhD and everything must be so cool to be in that kind of environment and everything.
Yeah.
Um, so no, that's great. I was wondering maybe I think some people have joined and we'll see if people join in and
Okay.
go on. So yeah, how did it all start? Like, how did you find this specific path that you wanted to follow? What kind of pushed you to it, and how does resistance training fit into your life, into your everyday routine?
Okay. So it was a bit of a winding path for me to really get into exercise specifically. Like I wasn't really a massive sporty girl at school. And when I went to university the first time, I started trying to run, and I wasn't particularly good at it. And basically, long story short, I went to the GP because I wasn't improving with my running, and I found out that I had a heart condition. So I had to have like 2 heart surgeries to remedy that, and that kind of changed my whole career trajectory. In that I was studying languages, and then I wanted to go back and be in healthcare, and I worked in maternity for a while as an assistant, and I liked women's health, but I still really liked the exercise side of things, and that's how I became a physiotherapist. And then I think off the back of that, doing physio and also having had my own struggles with my health, I really got into sort of running. And then from there, to support my running, I got into like strength-based training. And so I think if you want to get better at any sport, or you want to try to reduce the risk of injury, then strength training can be really fundamental to that. And then I think really what we're seeing in all the literature is that strength training is so supportive for women's health at all life stages. And so I think for me, it's just been this really sort of, I never had this sort of clear trajectory of where things were going to go, but everything has just sort of beautifully fit together and sort of just moved forward. So I kind of feel like it's a little bit like fate, that it all moved forward in the right direction and everything has come together as, you know, as I never would have predicted. I never thought I would have been here. So yeah, I think that's really how I got into strength training and health and fitness and physio.
Yeah, well, that's really, I mean, incredible. And the two, I didn't know about the two heart surgeries, so that's like crazy. Wow. I mean, amazing kind of journey and everything. And I think it's what you said, that it's kind of like the basis. It gives you the foundations for all these things that you can do in your life. And I think, I mean, I know that we sort of have aimed it to women's health because we hear a lot, in, I'm sure as you do in the clinic, and we do as well, that, you know, like, well, how do I do it? What, you know, how do I start? So it's mainly women coming with these concerns, but I think it's important for anyone, regardless. But yeah, we're going to focus more on the women's health side of things. So on that note, what are the key benefits sort of long term for women? Why should women be strength training? What are those key benefits that you can kind of think of?
Okay. So I would say the key benefits are really like our bone density. So our peak bone density is built before around 30 years old or before 30. And so if we are strength training in our 20s into our early 30s, we're going to really increase our bone density to a really great place, that it will reduce the risk of osteoporosis later in life. But what I would really hammer home at that point is, just if you didn't start when you're 30 doesn't mean it's useless to start now. Starting strength training at any age can help to mitigate against bone loss. So that would be the first thing. The next thing that I would say is like the loss of skeletal muscle mass. So, you know, as we age, over the age of 30, there is a slow decline of skeletal muscle mass throughout our life cycle, and doing strength-based training helps to retain muscle mass. And I think this is often a point that women are like, well, I don't want to be muscular, I don't want to look like bulky. You're not going to. It's so hard to put on muscle, and I think you have to look at it from the perspective of the more muscle you have, the more you are going to have strength, independence, mobility, all of those things that we want in our later lives, right? So retaining muscle mass can be so important. The other thing that the retention of that muscle mass does is it helps with your metabolic health. So if you are a woman that has PCOS or something like that, having as much muscle mass as possible can be really helpful for your metabolic health. So making you more sensitive to insulin, so your blood sugars aren't high. So it has a really big effect on that as well. And then if we think about things, like I said, like independence, being able to do things on your own later in your life, it has big effects on like body image. I think there's a lot for when you feel strong, you feel good in your body as well. And so there's, you know, I could go on forever about this benefits of strength training, but I would say they would be the main ones. And I think that, you know, I can't sit here and pretend that it doesn't have an effect on your body composition, and a lot of women are aesthetically driven, and that's okay, you know, but I think there's far wider, more important benefits to strength training than just changing our aesthetic.
Yeah, I think maybe that's like kind of where people begin, is that, oh, I want to look good, I want to feel good, and then they actually start noticing all these other little differences that come over time naturally. You know, your hormonal balance isn't going to change overnight, it's going to take time, but I think then people start to realize, like, oh, actually, you know, this is other kind of more wide-running effects. So yeah, I was just wondering, maybe do those kind of like needs change from like the different stages of womanhood, sort of from young adulthood, when you first go into your menstrual years, and then, you know, your pregnancy and postpartum period if you choose to have kids, perimenopause, all that, you know, all the stages that we're either going through or coming to us. You know?
I would say they don't change, no. I think what we have to think about is that there's like guidelines for a reason. So there's a minimum guideline, and that is to do 2 strength training sessions per week where you hit every major muscle group. And so I think really we have to think about the fact that You have to think about the fact that you have to hit those muscle groups every session. So we would say 2 full body sessions per week would be what's important, and that doesn't change throughout your life cycle. So if I were a woman in my menstrual years, that's what I should be trying to attain. If I were a pregnant woman, I could be trying to attain the same thing. Postpartum, menopause, PCOS, endometriosis, it doesn't change. And I think that's one of the problems in the online space, is there's a lot of kind of ideas that we should do with these really complicated kind of different types of training, and it's quite predatory when really we should be working towards those guidelines. And so for me, I think if you can do 2 strength training sessions a week, you're in a really good place. If you can do more than that, then fantastic, but I think that's the baseline of where we should start.
Yeah. Okay. Amazing. And I mean, just a question that came up into my mind right now. You know, like cycle. We've been hearing a lot about cycle training and train with your cycle and do this on this week and this on the other week. What's kind of the evidence on that? Should we be following a specific, you know, week by week plan, or how do you kind of deal with that?
So cycle thinking is not evidence-based. And if we think about cycle thinking concept, it's this idea that we change our training to suit the phase of our menstrual cycle. So say we were in our follicular phase, what we would do is we would be thinking about maybe doing more kind of higher intensity exercise or like strength-based exercise. And then there's this idea that when we're in our luteal phase, we might need to do slower forms of exercise or more low impact stuff like yoga or Pilates. We just don't have evidence that this is necessary. And one thing that I always say is women have won gold medals and set world records at any stage of their menstrual cycle, right? And so, and if we think about women's menstrual cycles, no one has the same length cycle, or very, you know, we don't see much regularity. So I might have a 28-day cycle, you might have a 21-day cycle. And thereby, if we're going to give these very strict kind of broad brushstroke guidelines as to what you should and shouldn't do, it already doesn't make sense because our cycles are so different. Plus the fact that if I were to think about strength training as a concept, right, we have to have progressive overload where we keep building week on week. And if I only do 2 weeks of strength training in the first phase of my cycle when I'm in my follicular phase, what that then means is I'm having 2 weeks off from that. And that means that I don't get progressive overload and I won't see changes in my condition. So actually the promotion of kind of cycle-based training like that can lead to deconditioning because we're not getting enough consistency of the exercise. The caveat to it that I would say is I think some women then think that what I'm saying is that you should just ignore the symptoms of your cycle and you should just battle on regardless. And that is not the case, right? What you have to do is kind of the me search. Like you might know that on day 26, 27 of your cycle, you have really bad PMS symptoms or you have cramps, and that stops you from wanting to engage in exercise, right? And that's fine. You can then move your sessions to somewhere else in the week or when you feel a bit more energetic or when you feel better. But so what it isn't is saying that your symptoms aren't real and you should push through. What it is saying is that you need to learn your own symptoms, track your own cycle and fit your exercise around that.
Yeah. No, amazing. Thank you for clearing that up and kind of addressing those issues. So from your, you know, clinical experience, and I'm sure you see so many women every day with different sort of concerns, have you noticed that there are any specific fears or, you know, maybe challenges that a woman might come to depending on where she is in her life stage, that, you know, she's coming to you with, and how you deal with that?
With engaging with exercise?
Yeah, like strength training, and or maybe, you know, they have a concern in mind and they actually suggest a specific kind of routine for that, or solution for that. So I'm thinking, you know, like a woman going sort of into her menopausal years and, you know, all the changes she's experiencing, she's coming to you saying, oh, well, you know, I'm getting sick, I can't do this, I can't do that. Kind of what do you notice in the age groups?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think there's a lot of fears, and I think people kind of have this idea of fragility in their body, particularly as they get older. And I think that's kind of a societal issue, how we view aging and how we view women And I think it kind of comes back to this idea that we are like fragile, and especially as we get older, we get weaker. And that's really problematic, because you can build strength and muscle at any age. And I do think there's often a rhetoric with some women that, oh, I'm too old for that now. And that is not the case. You can literally build strength and muscle and bone density at any age with the right sort of program, and building up progressively. I would say, I think a big barrier for a lot of women is time. And you know, having sufficient time to kind of strength train, it becomes up as a big issue, particularly in perimenopause, menopause age. I would say that, you know, women have a lot of competing demands. They might have aged parents that they're helping to care for. They might have young children if they've had children later in life, or they might have older children. They might have,
which is becoming, sorry to interrupt, which is becoming more common. You know, we're seeing a lot of women of more sort of advanced age coming in, and so exactly. Sorry, I interrupted your flow there.
It's so true. Like, and I think we haven't really seen this before. You know, it's relatively novel, and so there's women who've got toddlers or babies, and they're in perimenopause, and then, you know, they might have parents to care for and a career, and so I think time is often an issue for a lot of women, and that's why I always hammer home that the guidelines are like hitting every muscle group twice a week. You can do that in probably 20 minutes. And I think the problem with the online space now is we have this real big like gym phenomena, and there's people like going to the gym 6 times a week, and, you know, spending hours in there. You don't need that. And I also think the other barrier for a lot of women is this idea that they have to lift really heavy weights. Like, they have to be like body weight or on a squat, or like double body weight deadlifting, and that's not the case either. You can do a really good strength-based training program at home with resistance bands, with a few dumbbells. You just have to get to a point where you feel very fatigued, like you're about to fail, like that last rep isn't as good as the first. And so it doesn't matter how you get to failure, whether you have really heavy weights over few reps or really high reps over lower weight. So I think there's probably some of the main barriers I see. I don't know if you've seen any others.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to also comment on the fact that, you know, people keep thinking that, oh, I need to go in and lift heavy. It's not just that you're not, you know, after a certain point, you're not going to further improve your progress. It's the fact that it can be dangerous, and if anything, it can set you back. You know, if you have an injury or something, then you won't be able to train for a while, and so on and so on. So yeah, definitely, I think that's really key what you're saying about the time and balancing everything, or like kind of the idea that, oh, I can't have it all. I can't have my career, family, and my sort of my me time and my workout time. But actually, you can, you know, if you just need some organization, and I think it can be possible in certain situations. So let's say someone was coming to you, they had no sort of contact with resistance training at all. Where would you, I mean, I know you've mentioned the sort of the guideline a couple times, about 2 times a week, but kind of what would your suggestions be on like intensity, duration, and kind of what should they try?
So you want, when I say you want to hit each major muscle group, that would be like every muscle in your body, doing some sort of exercise for that. Now, with regard, when it comes to intensity, we often use something called rate of perceived exertion, and that is a scale of 1 to 10. 1 being, this is so easy, like I can have a chat to you and do that at the same time, and it's not causing me any bother. 10 is like that you're failing in that, right? And so really, we want to be with strength-based training at rate of perceived exertion of about 7 to 8. So you're going to be like, you're nearly going to fail on those last few reps, right? And so I can't really give you an exact number of where to start, because it depends on the weight that you're lifting. It depends on your history and whether you've done it before. But what I would say is, a lot of women start strength training, and I like they'll come to my menopause strength class and I'll watch them and they'll just like bang out like 50 reps and the last rep looks the same as the first.
Yeah.
And then I know they're not working hard enough, right? Because your last rep should, like, your form should start to drop off a little. It should be a real squeeze to get that last rep out.
Yeah.
And so you might want to start, say, setting yourself a range of like 8 to 12 and see how you go in those 8 to 12 reps. If the last rep is a real push, real struggle, you hit the right spot. If it's not, then you might want to either increase the amount of load that you're lifting, so increase the weight, or if you don't have access to lots of different weights, do a few more reps, or you can add another set. So have 8 to 12 reps, and we tend to do like 2 to 3 sets of that exercise. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so, you know, I think really you can probably do like a muscle group in like 20 minutes if you were to do it at that frequency ratio kind of thing. But it wants to be fatiguing. That's the best thing I can give you with regards to how it should feel. It shouldn't feel easy. If it feels easy, it's working.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Unfortunately, it needs to be a bit of a struggle.
Bit of a challenge.
Yeah. So I guess I'm gonna go into some more of the myths that we've been hearing. I know we've talked about a few up until now, but it's like, what, in your eyes, what's one thing that you wish women would sort of unlearn about all this and then kind of learn in the correct way, if you like? I don't know if you have. Maybe I'm putting you on the spot here, but
I think I wish, it sounds harsh, but I think I wish that women would unlearn that walking isn't enough. And, you know, when I'm in clinic, a lot of women will say, oh, I walk a lot. And I'm like, that's fantastic. That I'm not getting away from the fact that that is really, really useful. But unfortunately, we have to have some strength training element really if we're looking for optimum health. And, you know, I'm not saying that that is easy to fit in. I am not saying there's not a lot of barriers to that, but it isn't enough. And we should be doing strength training at any age, at, you know, any stage of a woman's life. I like, it's not enough just to be walking, unfortunately, is what I would say. And you know, I say that with love, and I'm not saying that in a critical way. I do understand that people have wildly different circumstances and different accessibility to different things, but I do wish that when we say everyone should be strength training, underlining the every about 15 times.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Cool. No, I appreciate that. Yeah, I hadn't actually thought about that sort of like the walking and the kind of running and everything, but yeah, it's really good. So we're kind of winding down a bit, coming towards the end of our chat. It's been really great, all the information. I just wondered if we can sort of summarize it a bit and kind of give people the key take-home messages. So yeah, kind of like how long or how many times a week they should be exercising, and kind of your little like small tips to go away with.
So if we talk about exercise in general, we want to be doing about 150 minutes of moderate intensity cardiovascular exercise or 75 minutes of high intensity cardiovascular exercise, or a mixture of both, right? What is moderate intensity cardiovascular exercise? That is, you know, going for a walk, you know, that is like anything that has your heart rate slightly elevated, where you're, you know, maybe cycling to work or whatever you're doing, that kind of thing. High intensity exercise can still be walking, but you need to be at a pace where you're really breathless, maybe walking up a hill, maybe running. Those sort of things are higher intensity, right? And that is kind of our cardiovascular, and we need that. And then the other thing that you need is that strength training. So that, as I said a couple of times, is twice a week, hitting every major group. And those two things together, some form of cardiovascular exercise and your strength training, is where you want to be. If I were saying, how do I start that? If I've never done training before and I might want to buy maybe a couple of dumbbells or some resistance bands and follow a YouTube video of full body strengthening. And that can just be a really great way to start. You don't need lots of complex stuff. You don't need to pay for really expensive coaching if you don't want to. You don't even need to join a gym to do this. So I would say it can be accessible for all, really. And I think if you can start there, that would be my main thing. I would also say building slowly over time is really important. So I would start with, like, maybe, as I said previously, doing like some lower reps, different lower weights, seeing how you feel on that. But remember, it has to feel hard, those last few reps. It's got to feel like it's fatiguing you. And you'll see your tolerance build over the week, and you'll see muscle soreness decrease as your body gets used to it. That would be my main advice.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining today. And I mean, where can people find you if they're interested in knowing more and getting in contact? I mean, obviously we've got your Instagram profile here, but
yeah.
I don't know if you have any other ways.
So yeah, I have my Instagram, which is at Chloe Stevens Physio. I have a website which has a contact box, and that is chloehealth.co.uk. And so watch out, because I will have some studies that I'll need participants for.
Yes, I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
I'm so excited for you. Starting your like PhD journey and everything. It's incredible. It's amazing.
So if you're like in perimenopause, I might need you for a study if you don't mind. So yeah. And I'm sorry that someone was knocking on my door. I think they were delivering wine.
Oh. I'm gonna enjoy that later.
Yeah.
Amazing. Cool. Well, thank you so much. It was lovely chatting to you today, and thank you to everyone who joined us. I hope that we answered some questions you may have had and addressed some issues, and of course we are all here to answer any more questions that might come up. So don't hesitate to contact either us or Chloe, and yeah, have a lovely rest of your day.
Thank you so much.
This was really fun. Cool. See you. Bye.
Bye.